Okay, we're going to talk about how to make a drum beat out of all of your found sounds. So I have my found sound composition here pulled up already. I've got my tracks labeled. I got the kick drum, snare drum, hi-hat, and then two more sounds. And I want to make sure that they're all trimmed properly. Again, you don't want any lead time at the beginning of your sound clips. That's especially important. You can do that by zooming in and just trimming that just a little bit there like that. All right, so these are looking pretty good here. Now, what I want to do next is get into my loops library, and I want to find a drum loop that is going to work well for this beat. And basically, I'm just going to copy that drum loop using these same found sounds. So let's go ahead and find that. One thing that I do want to click on, this is really important, is MIDI while I'm doing my search. That is going to make it so that I can actually see the beats on the drum track when I add it in. So I'm looking for something that says full. That's going to be really important. These other ones means, okay, so simple snare, that means this track only has a snare drum in it, which you could certainly do if you wanted to kind of like add up like a snare line and a kick line and a hi-hat line. That'd be just fine. But I'm going to find something that says full on it. How about this one? Yeah, that'll work. So I'm going to double click that and add it into my track. And here it is. It is currently muted. So I can unmute it and I can listen to it. Okay, and what I want to do is look at this track and find where it sounds like the kick drum is, where it sounds like the snare drum is, where it sounds like the hi-hat is, and then also if there's anything else incorporated there. So I'm going to double click on it. That'll open up this, but what we want to look at is the piano roll. Okay, now as we're looking at the piano roll, I bet we'll be able to tell which one is which. So let's look at this first line right here. These notes are all on this C1 key, and if I tap that, well, I can hear that that's definitely a kick drum. That means that my kick drum notes are going to need to line up these notes in the MIDI track. What about this one? Oh, okay, so that's a snare track. What's this one? Oh, that's also a snare track. That's fine. I can copy either one of those. What's this? Oh, that's a hi-hat. Okay. I can listen to it and just tell that it's a hi-hat. This is another kind of snare. That's another kind of snare. That is also another kind of snare. So I can basically like condense all of these and say, okay, I'm just going to do snares on whenever all of these notes hit, and that'll be fine. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is copy this kick drum line, and we'll see if I've got that right. I'm going to pause the recording now while I work on that. I'm just going to basically copy my kick drum and make sure I can get it lined up with all of those kick drum notes from the MIDI track. Okay, and my last kick drum is going to go right there to line up with that. Again, I'm using that keyboard shortcut, click, alt, drag to make that keyboard. One thing that I noticed while I was making this copy is that there were two kick drum notes right here, even though it kind of doesn't look like it on the MIDI track. I could definitely hear that there were two, so I had to put two in here. And the other thing I noticed is that actually my kick drum sample was longer than the first note. So what I had to do was actually make it, I copied it here and then made it shorter so that it could go there without overlapping. So I'm just going to put that back where it was. And then we can listen to the kick drum track and make sure everything's lining up. And then what you noticed is I didn't actually copy the full 8 bars. This loop that I pulled in is 8 bars long. It goes to the end of bar 8 here. But you can see that it's looping, which means I don't have to make the whole thing one at a time. I can actually just do the first half and then copy the whole first half by dragging a selection box around and then click, alt, drag my second half. And now it should loop just perfectly well. Let's give that a listen. Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing for my snare and hi-hat lines, and I'll show you that when that's done. Okay, I've got my snare done now, and then as I'm looking at my hi-hat, I can tell that actually my recording is going to be too long because this is a hi-hat note and that's a hi-hat note right there. So I'm just going to go ahead and make it quite a bit shorter, and that way I can get it lined up easier without it overlapping when I make these copies. Okay, that took me a little longer to do the hi-hats because there are a lot of them. There's a lot of hi-hat notes. So I'm just going to finish this off by copying the first half onto the second half. And let's do a little compare and contrast and see if we got it pretty close. So here's the original MIDI track. And then let's switch over to the found sound. Yeah, I think that sounded pretty good. So that is how you copy the MIDI drum sample with your found sounds.